It's time to declutter. Welcome to spring. You're inside the Mom Stuff Coffee Shop, a podcast dedicated to helping you get back up again, turning your pain into power and your trauma into triumph. I am your host, KK Smith, and I find joy in helping you get back up again. And today, we're kicking off spring with decluttering. Yes, we all need to declutter. Friends, there are so many things that we just absolutely need to get rid of. From too many clothes, too many pots and pans, too much excess, but mainly there are things on the inside that we need to get over and get rid of. Today, I am joined by a phenomenal young man who is not only an author, but he's also a podcast host. But what is so awesome about him is that he finally decided to face his fear. He finally decided to declutter his life with so much fear, and he prevailed with confidence. Confidence to start the life that he absolutely loved. And friends, I am so excited to kick off this month with decluttering the mind, facing your fear. What can happen when we actually decide to face our fears? What can happen if we actually decided to believe in ourselves, have confidence, and not get our direction from the external, but really realize that there's something deep inside of all of us that needs to come forth, that sleeping giant? What are your hopes? What are your dreams? Today, friends, I'm so excited about this young man. He's going to drop some gems on us, and we're going to finally realize that fear is false evidence appearing real. So let's get ready to declutter and step inside the Mom Stuff Coffee Shop. Welcome to the show, Ernest. Today we're talking about facing our fear of failure. And in life, we have to know that fear happens to so many people for so many different reasons. So inside this show, the Mom Stuff Coffee Shop is about turning our pain into power and our trauma into triumph. So I wanted to ask you, how has fear showed up in your life?
Fear showed up in my life in a number of ways. It's self-doubt, it's stifling activity, it's me not going forward with what I need to go forward with. It's me giving up before I even give it a fair try, and it's also me giving up at a time where it looks like things are going to be rocky. And, that's fear telling me, as fear would tell me in the past, give up now before it gets worse.
Now, where do you think your particular specific fear has come from in your life?
It's come from actual failure. It's come from watching people around me fail at things or not go forward with things as well, especially if it's family members. And a lot of people don't seem to understand that their actions, especially on young, impressionable minds, their actions say a lot more than their words do. So their words could say one thing, but then if you're looking at somebody and they're not necessarily following what they're telling you to do, it's kind of hard to believe you're going to, accomplish things or to be able to do whatever when it's like, well, you gave up on your dreams or you gave up doing X, Y, and Z. So it looks like I have to follow suit, or that's going to be, that's what's going to happen to me as well.
So the prototype that you were given, the pattern that you were given had a lot to do with you not facing the fear and giving up basically on your dreams.
Yeah, pretty much. Anything I sought out, or even like the first sight of difficulty, because nothing's going to come easy. But as soon as something difficult came along, it was, well, this is the end of the road. Let me just give up now before it gets worse. So, yeah.
Now, did you have strong mentorship in your life, or what happened in your childhood? What are some of the pillars in your childhood that you could remember that caused you to have so much fear? Or the absent pillars in your childhood that caused you to have so much fear?
I would have to say that it's a culmination of everything. So my mother, I would say she was a strong mentor, but I felt as though she was one of the individuals in my life that I can look at and say, well, she didn't necessarily give things her all. Now, granted, she was diabetic. She had 4 children. There was a lot of things that played into why she couldn't necessarily do the things that she wanted to do. But she always instilled it in myself and my brothers as well, to keep going forward and all this other stuff. I found out my dad wanted to be a doctor, but he's currently still not, pursuing his dreams or whatever. And he's been working the same job for probably over 20, 40 years now. So seeing them, and again, it's like, do I do what they do or do I go against what they're doing? Those are kind of like my mentors. And then I do have, I have seen other mentors who are accomplishing the things that they've sought out to accomplish, and books I've read. So, just a lot of things, really. My parents and outside voices as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, how has fear stopped you from the best part of your life? What is the main dream in your life, and how has fear kept you from that goal?
So I wanted to be when I was in the fifth grade, I knew I wanted to be an author. That's when I knew I loved writing. But again, the fear of not being able to accomplish that or be famous or just write something or come up with something worth reading. That stuck with me for a very, very long time. And I didn't really pick up writing again until my senior year of high school. And I was just doing blog writing then. And then even then I was like, okay, this is just blog writing for myself and more so just my opinions on things. And I didn't necessarily want to be a blogger, but it was still writing, so it still made me feel good. So it was like incrementally I was doing things to get over that fear, but I didn't really, I guess, put the pedal to the metal until I was like 21, 22, where when I wrote my first book. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do it, put it out for free, just in case people want to complain about it. And they say it's bad, it's this, that, and the third. I'm just going to say, well, yeah, at least you didn't pay for it. And then now I'm working on my second book. And I'm confident enough now to know that I'm good enough of a writer because from what people were telling me and from how I feel that I'm not going to just put it out for free anymore and things. But it's really, I feel as though had I not been fearful, since the fifth grade, I could have written a lot of books, or I could have at least kept on writing because from fifth grade to 12th grade in high school, that's a lot of years in between. And if I was really serious about it, or at least not fearful about the writing process and creative process, I feel as though I could have done a lot of things between fifth grade and 12th grade.
Well, the good news is that you're still young. You're 29, so you're still very young, and that's quite an accomplishment to have 2 books. So this leads me to my next question. What are some tips that you would give anyone that's dealing with fear? What are your major 3 tips for people that's dealing with fear and can't seem to push past that fear? And what would you give them? What kind of advice would you give them?
Yeah, I would say always bet on yourself. Put yourself forward and think about whatever you're trying to accomplish. Fear is going to be it's an obstacle that's going to be in the way regardless. And once you conquer that, you can do anything. Like when I conquered my fear and stopped that, I'm like, wow, I can actually write books. I can actually do this. I can actually do that. I can do all these things that I want to do. And the only thing that was in my way was fear. And you will find out that the fear was just you telling yourself these things and not necessarily outside noise. Yeah, you're going to have people saying things and that can play onto it. But ultimately, it's up to you to listen to those people. It's up to you to take heed in what they say. And it's up to you to figure out what is important to you and what isn't important to you. So I would say to people who are, struggling with some fear, get out of your own way. And once you conquer that fear, it's basically a door opens for you to just do anything that you want.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much. Now tell me, what are some of the amazing things that have happened in your life because you faced your fear? I'm talking about you didn't know these things were on the other side, just on the other side of that door of fear. What are some of the things that has happened in your life because you faced your fear?
Well, I mentioned my writing. And again, when I was fearful of writing, I was afraid to put myself out there. I had a blog, and certain people knew about it, but not everybody. And then when I started to put myself out there even more, not just with the blog writing, but just what I'm doing with my book, or just letting people know this is what I want to do with my life. It opened a lot of doors for connections and stuff. It hasn't opened like a lot of doors professionally yet, but as an independent writer, it's not, I'm pretty sure other independent writers can attest to this. It's not really something that's easy as other fields. So that's been a blessing. I started writing for a magazine last year in 2019. And again, if I didn't put myself out there and let them know, hey, I'm interested in not only just music, but I write about music as well, and all that, I wouldn't have gotten to that opportunity. So I still think the best has yet to come, honestly. But at the same time, the opportunities are there and they have been presenting themselves. And again, had I just not done anything out of fear of I will get rejected or no one's going to like it, no one's going to read it, no one's going to tune into whatever, then that would have, none of those opportunities would have happened.
So I think with fear, what also happens is that we do not allow ourselves to fail. So have you been embracing failures and using that failure as a platform for guidance for the next time? Because that's one thing I remember about Kobe Bryant. He helped me so much this year with fear. And I tell people that, and they say, Kobe Bryant. And I say, yeah, because there was a time in his life when he was 11 years old, and that whole year he didn't get a layup. He didn't get anything done. And he was like, I'm determined to be the best that I can be at basketball. So he used his failure as a platform to say, okay, what could I have done better the next time? So are you using your fear as a guide to, okay, I failed at this, or I didn't do so good at that, and now I could move forward in this area?
Yeah, I would have to say that's a lesson that I recently learned. Not recently, probably like a few years ago. That is definitely a lesson I've learned a few years ago. I wish I'd learned that lesson once again when I was younger.
Yes, me too.
Yeah, even in my early 20s, I wish that was a lesson I learned. But again, it wasn't until like my mid 20s, 25, 26, that was a lesson that I learned. And I grew up idolizing Kobe as well, but I always looked at him and all the other great just athletes or just great superstars as people who were either lucky or they were just blessed. And I saw myself as, well, maybe you're failing because you're not blessed. You're not meant to be, one of these people. So, it was, like I said, it wasn't until like my mid 20s and I was like, you know what? I'm going to learn from these lessons because I'm tired of feeling down on myself whenever I fail, whenever I, something doesn't turn out the way that I wanted it to be. Also, sometimes when things turn out a certain way, I started to retrain my mind to see the good in it. Like what did go well in this situation, as opposed to just it's all bad because it didn't go the way that I planned it or I wanted it to be.
Right. I like that. So you take the experience and then you extract what went well here and then what can I work on? That's a great way to look at it, to get better at any type of fear. So I wanted to also ask you, how do you deal with fear in the moment of choice? So let's say you're having a failure and you're not letting this failure overtake you like before. So how do you deal with the fear in the moment, in the exact moment that is happening?
So fear in the moment. Now, I don't try to, it's weird. So with me and emotions, I like to, instead of suppressing them or instead of lying to myself and say, oh, you're not feeling this way, I allow those feelings to go on, but I don't allow myself to continuously feel that way. If I'm in the moment, if I'm in the moment, whatever the moment is, and I'm fearful of it, I still allow those emotions of fear to go on and process. I don't try to stop them. Whatever thoughts I'm having, I will have those thoughts because within time, and it's usually within an hour, at least under an hour, after I'm thinking these thoughts, I start to then rationalize those thoughts or try to, argue against them. And then the process of just moving forward from whatever is bringing me fear starts to come in. But again, if I were to just block those feelings out or give up and just wallow in negativity, I don't think that would be possible. The moving on process would be possible.
Yes, I love what you said about letting them move through you. There's this author that I absolutely love, and he talks about letting yourself feel the emotion, whatever the emotion is, and not getting stuck, not clinging to it, but let it come up and feel it and fully feel it and then let it go. Because it's not, our emotions, we're not supposed to cling on to them for dear life. We're just supposed to experience it and let it go. So I absolutely love that. So I wanted to also ask you about authorship. So what is your genre of writing?
This is a tough question only because, well, I'm going to say literary fiction. I think that's the term. I just learned that term. But I think that's the best to describe it. Because why I say it's tough is because I have a bunch of story ideas, but they're usually different from one another. You know, there's people who are writers and they're fantasy writers, they're dramatic writers, they're comedy writers. And it's like me, sometimes I haven't delved into fantasy yet or anything, but drama and comedy and things of that nature, these are the things that I write about, sometimes a mixture of both. The first book was actually a self-help book. So it wasn't anything, it wasn't a story at all. But I'd probably see myself doing more of those in the future. I didn't want to go into writing just to be the self-help author. So it's really just, if I had to categorize it myself, it's just really what I feel needs to be said. I know that's not a category or whatever, but it's basically what I feel needs to be said, either told through a story or told through an experience or shared through a self-help book or whatever. So, yeah.
Okay, I understand, and leaving yourself some space not to be in a box of this genre or that genre, or I understand that. Yeah. So what are some tips that you would give authors, like aspiring authors? What are some great tips that you would give to get your book started, to get your platform started? What would you recommend?
Well, publishing right now through Amazon KDP, they seem to be doing well. I've seen a lot of great reviews with them. My book does come out on the 30th of this month, so I would know till then or a little after then how they really are through experience. But I would say, especially if you're an independent author, if you are someone who doesn't necessarily have the money to hire an illustrator or editor or someone of that nature, use the free tools that are at your disposal. I use Canva to design my book covers. Yes, you are going to have to edit yourself unless you can find someone who's willing to do it for free. But these are things that's going to take work, especially if you're an independent author. It's a lot more work for you to do on your end than it is for someone who isn't independent, because they have deadlines, but they also have people who edit their books for them. They also have illustrators if they didn't illustrate the covers for themselves. So it's a lot of work that needs to be done on your end. But I think the best part about it is, since you are the independent author, you set your own deadlines. So if let's just say a year from now, you wanted to publish a book, but you don't necessarily have the money for the artist to create the cover, well, you can take whatever from now until next year. You can take the time to
plan your budget.
Perfect your graphic art skills or whatever, and at least to a level to where it's nice for you. And the same thing with the editing. You have all this time to reread your book and edit and change things up and all this other stuff. So there are some perks to it, but it is a lot of work, especially if you're doing it by yourself. Now, again, this is only for people who are doing it independently. If you're not, then by all means, you have people in your life who it's their job to do that. So
it is a lot of work. I myself am an author as well. And I can remember writing the book and 2 years later, editing the book myself. But I took out about 55 pages. That's how much editing that I had to take out. And by then I had learned so much about editing and publishing, but just to put it out there raw, it was not ready. So I understand it's so much work to authorship. And like you were saying earlier, not staying in the same genre, it allows you to move away from the familiar and then just really explore and have a lot of fun being an author. Okay, so now it's time for something to sip on. So, and something to sip on, I asked you 3 important life questions. So the first question I want to ask you is, what are you working on in your life right now?
So as I mentioned, I got a book coming out, Late Nights on Broadway, coming out the 30th of this month. I've been working on that. I want to say I started in 2019. I don't even remember when in 2019. That's crazy. But it's coming out this year, or at least before the end of the year, this year. So that's what I've been working on. I have my own podcast as well that I've been working on, both of them. Staying consistent with those. I've been at that for both of them for about 3 years now. So
we got 2 podcasts.
Yeah, 2 podcasts.
And what are the names of those podcasts for the listeners?
So one of them is the Ernest Thoughts Podcast. That's a podcast about politics, pop culture, and just life in general. Okay. The other one is the My 2 Cents Podcast. That podcast is about music. I would listen to an album and review it and talk about it, or just talk about like a music artist and what they're going through within the industry, or just the music industry in general. And those are both weekly podcasts. You can find them Spotify, Apple Podcasts, a whole bunch of other places. So.
That's awesome. Awesome. Yeah. So the next question I want to ask you is, what brings you joy? I'm talking about pure joy. What brings you joy?
Being able to say that I'm a real creative person at heart. So whenever I do something, especially with my hands, but just do something in general and put it out there in the world, being able to say I did that, that really brings me joy. Seeing people gravitate toward it, whether they love it or hate it, that brings me joy as well. So just to see the reaction that, hey, at least somebody checked it out. These are just some of the things that bring me joy outside of, simple things like money and, nice clothes and things of that nature. So, yeah.
Your creativity. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. And the final question I want to ask you is, what has been your greatest life lesson?
My greatest life lesson. You have to be your own supporter, your own fan, your own cheerleader. Now, that's not to say you can't have outside people to do that for you, but as I mentioned before, if you can't do that for yourself, doesn't matter how many other people are saying, go Ernest, go, or go whoever go, and you can do it. If you don't feel like you can do it, then you won't do it, and you won't be able to. And you're not going to be able to do it. So with me, it's just like I have to be that person for me first before I expect anybody else to be my supporter. Somebody who's going to have my back. I have to do these things for myself first.
Okay, those are great. That's an absolute great life lesson. So before we wrap it up, I wanted you to let everybody know, how can they get in touch with you? How can they purchase your books? How can they follow you on your different platforms?
Yeah. So you can add me on Facebook, Ernest Sandefer. That's Ernest Sandefer, Sandefer. Follow me on Twitter if you're on Twitter. You Love Ernest. That's the word you, and then it's underscore, and then love, and then my name, and the underscore again, then my name, Ernest. That's the same for Instagram as well. The podcast, once again, the Ernest Thoughts Podcast. Find that anywhere you listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google, Anchor. And then the My 2 Cents Podcast, the other podcast. That way it's spelled, the word my, it's spelled the way it is, but 2 cents is actually spelled out like the dollar amount if you were to write it out numerically. So, the $.0.002. So 2 cents and then podcast. These are, that's how you can find me. And then if someone wanted to email me as well, it's sandefer91@gmail.com. And to purchase my books, I will put pre-orders come out actually the 15th. I'll have that link posted everywhere on social media, but once again, the book will be out on Amazon KDP. So you'll be able to buy it on Amazon, pretty much. And once it's released, I'll have that link out as well. But like I said, pre-orders come out on the 15th. So that is next week, I believe. So be on the lookout, people.
Again, thank you so much, Ernest, for sharing your stories on facing failure and helping our listeners to step up in spite of fear, in spite of the fear of failure, and also for so many creative ideas for authorship, for just being yourself. I really appreciate you coming on the show today.
Appreciate you for having me.
Friends, I hope this show was food for your soul and fuel for your life. It's time to declutter. Stop caring about what people think. Finally have the confidence to pursue the life that you love. No longer do we have to be on the sidelines, wondering, wishing, waiting for an opportunity, waiting for someone to say, you're good enough. Let's create our own opportunities. And it starts with decluttering our minds. So friends, everything about our guest will be in our show notes anywhere you find this podcast. You can follow his links and connect with him there. So go ahead and rate, subscribe, and share this podcast with anyone who wants to get back up again. And remember, you can always celebrate wins and get back up again inside the Mom Stuff Coffee Shop.